Welcome to Driving the Line, the pursuit of safety, where we talk about the real issues out on the road, focus on safe driving, and learn industry best practices from your hosts Kenny Ray, Mike Bohan, and Jim Seibert, in the hopes that by driving the line, we get more drivers home safe and sound. This podcast was made possible by Marsh McLennan Agency.
Welcome back, everybody. Part 2 of mental health in the trucking industry. I'm Jim Seibert, your host today, along with my friends and co-workers, Mike Bohan, Kenny Ray, and Bruce Morton from the North. Bruce is our subject matter expert, if you couldn't tell from part 1 in this series, and we're glad to have him online. Gentlemen, before we get into it, anybody have any thoughts or comments? Have you reflected upon our discussion last time, building into this second part?
Yeah, Jim, this is Kenny, and I would like to, first of all, Bruce, thank you so much. The conversation we've already had today has been so educational and enlightening for the three of us, and I know our audience is going to benefit tremendously from it. Because we are a trucking podcast, and I want to, as much as we can, keep the focus on that. I've got two things I'd like to share with you that Mike and I see often when we're out dealing with drivers and dealing with motor carriers and dealing with companies. And I just like your, just your response to these two situations, because truck drivers are going to relate to the two things I'm fixing to ask you about, and just give some real practical, some pragmatic steps or tips for how to deal with these things. And the first one is this: no matter what you read about how to be healthy, how to live a healthy lifestyle, how to be healthy as you grow older, there's always 4 basic ingredients that people tell us that we need to adhere to. And that is that we need to eat right. We need to have proper nutrition, the right foods in the right amounts. We need to get quality sleep, preferably 7 to 8 hours of uninterrupted high quality sleep. We need to exercise regularly, as much as we possibly can. And then we need to reduce stress in our life. And most truck drivers, if I said, the key to a healthy life is to eat right, sleep right, exercise right, and have a stress-free life, they would just double over in laughter, because none of those things come easy in the trucking industry, primarily because of the lifestyle. They're always in that truck. They're always on the go. They're in a different town every single day. So I would first, and I'm going to go ahead and share the second one with you with your permission, but then I'd like for you to respond, from a mental health aspect, how do drivers deal with it when they're always in this transient mode, if you will. And the second one is this. These are fairly rare, but when they happen, they're extremely important. And that is, if a driver is out on the road and is involved in a traumatic incident, and the classic one is a fatality wreck. The driver's driving down the highway, he or she's doing nothing wrong. Somebody runs a stop sign, goes under the trailer, and you've got a fatality crash. And the driver gets out of the truck, he or she's uninjured. They walk back there with their cell phone, and they are now witnessing with their own eyes a horror that they can't even wrap their mind around. They try to call their boss, their dispatcher, but they may be there 10, 15, 20 minutes if they're in a rural area before anybody shows up. And they're just playing this tape over and over in their mind. And what compounds it, I think, and what I've seen, and Mike can add to this if he'd like, but oftentimes when the highway patrol gets there, investigates the crash, and tells the driver, okay, driver, you're free to go, and he calls his dispatch and he said, well, they tell me I can go. Well, the dispatch, the people back at the office, slip right back into the regular mode. Well, can you make the delivery on time? The customer's waiting on this product. And all that truck driver's seeing in his mind over and over and over and over are the graphic images of what he witnessed when he first got out of that truck. Again, something he had never, ever seen before. So if you could address the issues with trying to be healthy when you're living this constantly nomadic lifestyle, and some pragmatic tips or thoughts, even for companies. What should companies do to help take care of their drivers post-traumatic incident. If you would address those, I'd be very grateful.
Okay, so we'll start with the first one. Very difficult to live that healthy lifestyle. We hear about the 80-20 rule. I don't even know if that's possible for a truck driver. If they could get the 60-40 or the 50-50, I think we're winning. Ways to do that: bring healthy snacks, have food in the truck so they're not always eating out. I do some deep breathing. I do some pelvic tilts when I drive around because I'm putting 30,000 plus on, not as much as them. Or just simple movements, simple stretching, and moving every time they stop. Add a little walk in. It may only be a few minutes or a couple stretches, or you can think of doing yoga moves, are always great as well. And like I said before, you almost have to build it into your lifestyle, and you have to check in, right? So if you build it into your calendar, and even if you miss a couple times where you don't get the sleep or the exercise or the proper eating, it's not going to throw off your whole week or your whole month. I build it right into my calendar, and so does my wife, when we work out, when we're going to go to bed, when we're going to eat, calculating those meals, and they should talk to each other about it, I think, as well, if they don't have family, to find out what works for other people. I know the hard part is they don't readily have a gym, but body weight movements, yoga, or just a couple of dumbbells, there's a lot of free workouts out there. My friend Kat Musney at Kitty Hug Fitness has 600 free workouts. There's Sydney Cummings. She has a ton of workouts as well. And a lot of them are body weight and a lot of them are short. Just something to think about. They may not have the space, but if they have nice weather and a place to work out, or if they are staying in a hotel room, it's a thought. That's what I do when I'm out of town. I just fire up one of those on my iPad and do the best that I can. At least it's something, right? And when the food thing, I think it's important to just plan it out, because, right, if we don't have any food in the house and our options are an apple that looks suspicious or that bag of chips, we're going for the bag of chips, right? Let's be honest. We all like to eat. But yeah, I know there's more and more healthy choices out there. There's more and more options for people, even if they are, a vegan or a vegetarian. I'm seeing it in a lot of the restaurants that I go to, and I actually just ate vegan food yesterday, and it was really good. The chili was spot on, I must say, and there was no meat in it, and I'm a meat eater, so there is those options, and it's worth trying it. You may not get the pick right away, but you have to listen to how your body feels physically and that connection with it. Because I know when I eat kind of a heavy or gross meal, you're not really motivated, may give you some gas. So you just have to learn through it. So that's kind of the answer on the first one. Part two is tough, because I think there's two parts to this. Number one, there's the employee. And number two, there's their employee and client relationship, right? So let's start with the employee. The employee needs support. We have to have a program for trauma and mental illness, just like we have a safety or a DOT or a fleet driving program. We have to be prepared, because we don't know if it'll happen. And if it doesn't, great, right? If we don't have an injury, awesome. We have the program. But if we do, we want to be prepared, and we want to train our drivers on that. So however we can get in front of them, whether that be when they're coming back to the yard or the shop, or is it through the dispatchers that are trained? Who are they going to call? Who can they process that through? Is it someone at the company? Is it a gatekeeper? Or is it a call to outside counsel? Or is it simply that 988 number where there is therapists there? Do they have that availability for that? And it has to be clear. It has to be a magnet on their fridge. It has to be a document in their sleeper berth, so they can just pull it out and there it is. And that they know they can make that call. And let's say that call takes 20 minutes. Dispatch has to be like, okay, hey, take that call. I'm going to have a better driver. And if they can mentally drive to finish it, that's great. But on the employer side, that expectation has to be communicated to that driver, that they care, and it has to be communicated to that client. Hey, Mr. Client, if we have this issue, here's our policy, and you have to respect that. At our office, if we have a client who doesn't take our advice or doesn't take our right insurance or doesn't want to do safety or risk management or employee well-being, sometimes we just don't partner with them. Yeah, is that a loss of revenue? But why do we want to partner with someone who doesn't keep our values? It doesn't make any sense. It's not good to just write insurance to write insurance. We want to make your company better. And by doing that, we want to give you the whole risk management program, right? So I think those clear communications are there. And granted, I get this. Sometimes you're going to lose business. You're going to lose your best driver, your best foreman, but are they really the best if they don't want to make the company better? That's always my question to them. And is it going to take time? Absolutely. It's not an overnight thing. But we really have to look at that dynamic. If there's that one bad apple, is that affecting more people than that one person? That toxicity or that pushback might make others not reach out. And we don't want that, right? And that can happen. We've all seen it at our clients, at our work that we did. It's clear. And if you keep that person around, it's just going to keep circling and coming back. Yeah, maybe they do have good 3 weeks, but then that next week they're back to where they were. And we discovered this with one of our clients we did that safety performance index, and we had like 6 or 8 people take it in the class, and it kept coming up that it was the same person causing the issue over and over. So they went to that person. The person happened to agree based on that. They got him some training, and that person was able to stay on. And they agreed, though, if there wasn't that change, that person wouldn't be able to stay on because it was just affecting a big portion of their business. And that's not good.
Great thoughts there and questions, Kenny, and really appreciate the deep dive, Bruce. We have hit multiple reasons and multiple times so far the why poor mental health in the trucking industry is becoming more common and thankfully more talked about now. But Bruce, since 2019, the trucking industry has routinely made the top 5 for suicide rates per 1 million workers. And construction's also in the top 5. It's something else I noted when thinking about you coming on here. And so when we think about that, we think about these comments that you and Kenny and those thoughts that you just shared. Let's shift and focus a little bit towards the fleet owners, the managers, and not just the operators out there, but these operators of the machines, they're talking to each other. Maybe they're talking to other truckers as they're going up and down the road. Maybe the CB's still alive and well. Kenny, Mike, you know better than I. Hey, these guys are stopping at truck stops and they're seeing each other's. So signs and symptoms, what are signs and symptoms of depression or actions that could lead us to intervene or approach our drivers about, subordinates, fellow drivers on the road? What are we looking for in terms of something's off?
Well, not wanting to work or not wanting to come to work is a start. Someone who's usually happy, that's not happy. The joking person becomes serious, giving away priceless possessions, whether that be tools or guns or money. Showing up, not put together, not shaved, not groomed, not showered. Also things like just general getting angry at someone for something that normally wouldn't get angry on. If you're normally meet a guy for dinner and he's missed 4 or 5 dinners or breakfast or whatever, cocktail, beer, that's another sign. They're distancing themselves. Extra abuse of drugs and alcohol. If someone you know for 10 years doesn't drink and now suddenly they're drinking, that seems a little weird, right? Or the drug side, they haven't used medical marijuana and now they're suddenly using it, or using illegal drugs, or erratic driving behaviors, right? All these trucks have their monitors in them. If someone's normally a great driver, like they win the Safe Driver Award every year, and next thing you know, they have 4 claims, that could also be an issue as well, especially if they're at fault. Sometimes you just have a bad streak, but those at fault ones definitely would throw it up in the air. Or injuries. Someone that doesn't have injuries and now suddenly they're having 3-4 injuries in a row. Are they taking risky behaviors? Are they doing things outside of work that they shouldn't be doing? So those are all some of the factors that I kind of look for. I know that's a lot.
With you sharing those, one thing we've talked in the past, in some of our previous podcasts, we've dealt with the issue of fatigue management, and I've heard Mike Bohan say this many times. We have to be our brother and sister's keepers. We need to be looking out for each other, and I think those same principles. In the past, we've talked about if a fellow driver sees somebody that they don't think safe to drive, have the courage to intervene, go over and say, hey, bud, you look like you're tired. You look like you need some rest. And I'm thinking, as you're going down that list, we also need to be our brother and sister's keepers in terms of mental health. And it needs to be something we're courageous about, that we're willing to intervene because we actually love that person. We care for that person. They may only be a coworker. They may be our friend, but we care about them as a fellow human being. And if we see somebody like that, then we need to at least be able to talk to them or go to our boss and say, hey, boss, you may need to go talk to Jim, or you may need to go check on Mike. Something's not right with him. And I guess because I would like, I don't want us to put all the onus of trying to get help on the person that needs help, when they may be unwilling or incapable even of asking for that help. And it may be important that as just a fellow human being, a fellow worker, again, our brother or sister driver, we're willing to take the chance of possibly offending them by saying, hey, I care about you. I love you. You're my brother, and something ain't right with you. Let's talk about it. I just want to encourage our drivers and our terminal managers and our dispatchers to genuinely care about each other and not just pretend we're all robots out here, automatically doing these jobs. Those are human beings sitting in those trucks, driving those trucks. They're men and women that have problems, that have issues, and sometimes they need another driver just to come along beside them and say, hey, let's talk. Let's go sit down and get a hamburger and a Coke. Let's talk. And but as you were going down that list, I was just thinking it's so important for us to look out for each other. And I've heard Mike mention that so many times. And Mike, it just resonated with me when Bruce was going down that list of the fact that you've talked in the past about how we need to intervene for each other in fatigue. And I think we do in the same way in this.
Well, and I agree 100%, Kenny, and I appreciate Bruce sharing that list, because as you're going down through that, Bruce, I'm thinking in my mind, going back to the scenario that Kenny had mentioned at the beginning of this episode, where he was talking about a traumatic event where a driver was involved in an accident where there was fatalities. Well, I think everybody's going to know if a driver goes through something traumatic like that, we may want to check up with that driver. We may recognize right away that may have been hard for them, but that list you're going down through is good for us to hear and be able to recognize those things, because maybe a driver didn't go through some traumatic accident or something like that. It's just the grind of life, the grind of being on the road, that kind of stuff that has got them in a place where they need some help. And we need to pick up on those things that you just listed off there, Bruce. And I think that goes back to what Kenny was saying, is we've got to watch out for each other. We've got to look at our brothers and our sisters and say, hey, look, I'm not I'm not trying to cause any problems or anything like that, but I'm worried about you. I've seen this thing, and it's maybe one of those things that you just mentioned on your list, Bruce. And I may not be qualified to help you with this, but I sure would like you to talk to somebody. I sure would like you to be able to reach out and just be able to have a conversation with somebody that might be able to help you with what you're going through. Because I have that scenario that Kenny talked about before. I've had a client that, unfortunately, over the last several years, I've seen a lot of on the insurance side claims where someone else committed suicide by truck. I don't know if you guys have ever heard that term or not, but it's basically where somebody will walk out in front of a truck, jump off a bridge into a truck, something like that, and they're committing suicide. But what then that does is leaves that truck driver with that traumatic event that just happened and walking through that process. So when Kenny was talking about that, that's where my mind went. And I've seen companies have to walk through that. And I'm telling you, that's an event that a driver, if they experience that, it's an extremely difficult process to go through. But we can see that. We would understand that. We recognize that. Man, that's something we need to get this driver in and have them talk to somebody. But so often, I think predominantly the drivers that are having issues, they're not going through those traumatic events. It's just the day in, day out grind of the job, and they need help. So I think, to Kenny's point, being our brothers and our sisters keeper, just recognizing, hey, we want the best for everybody. If somebody's having an issue and I see that, like I said, I may not have all the tools to help them, but I sure do want to at least point them in the right direction to get some help. So that's why I appreciate you sharing that stuff, Bruce, because I'm as we're going through this topic, I'm learning, I'm taking notes, and I'm learning about this topic that doesn't get discussed a ton in our industry.
And just a simple, hey, how are you doing? Are you okay? How's the day going? It doesn't have to be a deep dive. If you want it to be, then great, right? We have the 3 V's: be visible, be vocal, and be vulnerable. And I chose to do that. That doesn't mean everybody else does. So the homework to the people that are listening, I love giving homework. I don't know, people don't like it when I do it, but if someone comes to you, just like regular first aid and CPR, every chapter, call 911. It doesn't hurt anything. The paramedics, the police officers, the first responders will tell you, hey, we'd rather you call and get us there than to not call at all if you choose not to help. So with mental health, same thing. If you choose not to help because you can't, or you don't have the time at that time, or you're just uncomfortable, pass that over to someone else. And I don't mean just give them a website. Pass it to another person. Give them that 988 number. When we talk about that QPR training, that question, persuade, refer, what if we don't do it? What is the alternative? It's grim. We don't want to talk about it, but we have to, because it is. They might take their life. And I've had a few times people call me and they're like, Bruce, I have this person. They're thinking of doing it. And I'm like, here's what you have to do. You have to ask them, are you thinking of taking your life? If the answer is no, okay, we don't have a crisis. We call a number, we get them to a counselor, we sit them down and talk to them. If that answer is yes, we have to ask, do you have a plan? If that answer is no, we still have a bit of a crisis and we need to get them to services or call a number. But if that answer is yes, there's no wiggle room. It's either yes or no. If it's yes, it's 911, and now we have a crisis. A lot of these counties now have officers who are CIT training, and I can never remember what it is, but it's to deal with mental health issues. They even have therapists on staff who will come with that officer. That's who we used when my son would have physical contact at the school or at our office, at our home. So there is that possibility that you're going to get there. No matter how mad that person is at you, that doesn't matter. You may have saved a life, right? Just like with first aid and CPR. Just like I talk about it with fall protection. If that person's not tied off up on the roof and you're getting at them to get them tied off, and they're pissy because they want to get their job done, but they come over and start screaming and hollering at you, they can't fall off the roof. That's the same thing with mental health. They have to go hand in hand. It has to be the same concept to normalize it. It needs to be done. And so once we get one victory, though, within a company, you will see that snowball. When you get those frontline supervisors trained and they realize, oh man, I've seen some things in the past. I'm not going to miss those in the future. Are we going to be perfect? No. I had a friend email me or DM me one time a picture of books they were reading because I was interested. And one of the books said, How to Live with Depression. I missed it. And I woke up in the middle of the night and I was like, oh man, I got to look at that picture again. I saw it, reached back out, and they're like, nope, it's not me. Trust me. It was just someone in our family that's dealing with it, and I wanted to be prepared. So we're not going to be perfect. We can't be perfect with everything, and we can't get down on ourselves if we are not. But the more we can help and the more we can save, you're going to see those victories, which is going to be just amazing throughout the industry.
What letters or what level of training do I need to get behind my name? How many hours of a lecture or a class do I need behind my name and on my resume to listen? Some of the military slogans or things that we used to have, and I'll probably butcher them, but so I'll say them kind of in jest, is like, I would rather sit and listen to you for 3 hours than sit at your funeral for an hour, right? Or I would rather carry you kicking and screaming to somebody to help you than to carry your casket, and it's that level is, well, what do I need to do to become qualified to be a listener and to ask those questions? The answer is none. I mean, there are certified helpers that know what they're doing, but we're the first line defense, Bruce. Tell me if I'm wrong. I'm sharing just straight raw feelings here, but I'm the first line defense. I'm the caretaker for my brothers and my sisters. That's what I do. And I hope that they do it for me, that they're asking me the same questions when they recognize some of these signs and symptoms that you already shared. And I love the fact that what you brought was realism. Very, very real things on your list. The list that I put together in my preparation felt very, very canned and generic to what you brought. So I really appreciate you sharing that. There's a couple points and things that you said in response to Kenny that shot off loads of thoughts for me. And you said document in the sleeper berth. And there's got to be some sort of those things that are out there already, and companies that have already set up these programs. I think that that's an excellent example. But Kenny, you can attest to this. The shock of an incident, we fall back to the level of our lowest training, right? There's a saying for that too. We don't jump to when we were at our peer. When we are under full contact, when we are in shock, we are going to drop to the level of our lowest input of training, not be the superhero that everybody imagines ourselves to be. Calm, cool, and collective. And so a document in the sleeper berth with, hey, it's a flow chart of this is the way it went. But for that to be really effective, exercising the plan. And that exercising of the plan is leading me into my next question for you, Bruce. And that is, what does a successful company program look like for you? If you had to start, you got a there, or for all the young kids, we got maybe I should say the TV with the digital marker, but I go with a whiteboard and dry erase marker. If you could draw out a plan for the leaders of these companies and what you feel like the truck drivers, the people in the field, the maintainers, the maintenance shops, the you're over the road and all intermediary. If you had to build that, knowing that at some point there's going to be a trucker that may or may not be involved in an incident, and they're going to be, one, injured sitting in their cab, or two, they get out and they are in that immediate shock. The likelihood of them of being physically fit and mentally completely healthy in there is very, very low. And this person is going to have to fall back on a program. They're going to have to fall back on the document sheet that they pull out of the sleeper berth that leads them in their next steps. What does your easel or your dry erase marker board look like for a successful program in a trucking company?
Yeah, so each company is going to be a little bit different based on size, right? But it all starts with the training of the frontline supervisors and with, like we talked about, that top-down management. And then it comes down to training for all of those frontline supervisors, and then some kind of training about their program with these drivers so they understand the process and how it should be used and when it should be used, right? We all know the process when there's an injury, right? That's posted all over the place. We know what to do. We know who to go to. But if we have some type of mental health issue, or we're not feeling right with or without a diagnosis, we need to know what that process is and create a safe space, right? Create a space where they feel comfortable coming forward, and create a space where they feel comfortable coming forward without threat of losing their job. Okay. 25 years ago, 30 years ago, people wouldn't come forward with an injury because they were worried about losing their job. The same as now. I forget what the stat is. 22%, I believe, feel that they could not get promoted or they could lose their job. So that's a lot out there when you think about what the employment is. And then we just go from there and we do that program and we exercise that program and we continue to talk about it. And if we do have an issue and we use the program, we then reevaluate it, right? To make sure that it's functioning how it should be. And it has to be multifaceted, right? So we have to have, whether it be video training or toolbox talks or formal annual training or emails, texts, whatever your drivers are most likely to respond to. But what I would say, I would also want to get, if they do have family, make sure the family knows so they can support them. All too often something happens and then the family doesn't have the support. But with these EAP programs, if they're on the insurance, the family can also use them, right? So if there was a tragic event and this driver is not feeling well and they have to take some time off and they need to use it, maybe that wife is having some issues, or that boyfriend or girlfriend or kids for that matter, they can use those resources as well. So sometimes I think we forget about that family piece, because that's super important, because they're going back with trauma. And when we talked about it before, like that could affect the family dynamic. So we want to make sure they're supported as well. So that when they do come back, they're at that best spot to continue to drive in a safe manner.
Let me just comment really quick on that, because you created a excellent point there. We, in the military, we just like, okay, they gave us a pile of stuff. We're just going to get thrown in our foot locker. We're tossed in the trash on the way out. And we completely forgot to support our own families in that manner. And so I think that the point you just made, and what I'd love our listeners to take from this, is you're absolutely right, Bruce. And it's imperative for these owners and the supervisors to impress upon the drivers, the maintainers that are out there, this packet here is not for you. Okay. We've got your training. We've got your back. This is for your family, because we care about them and their well-being as well. You take this home and deliver it to your family and have a discussion with your significant other in your family on how to use it correctly.
And we're here if they have questions.
I think that's good stuff. It's all great stuff. Where can our listeners turn to if they need some resources? where can they go for more information out there? I want to make sure that we share some, National Suicide Prevention Lifelines with them. You got any websites or any groups that you want to share with them that can help them if they're having an emergency or need to talk to somebody, or two, how do we stand up a program in our company?
Yeah, NAMI, National Alliance for Mental Illness, great National Suicide Prevention Hotline, Construction Suicide Prevention Hotline, my website, Wisconsin Construction Wellness Community. Everything is on there, including a program. There's all the crisis numbers for all the counties within Wisconsin. There's QR codes for services as well, articles, videos. I know your people are truckers, but the AGC of Missouri has great information that just is not construction. Toolbox talks, programs, videos, you name it. National AGC has great stuff. Humorous website, Man Therapy, if you want to go the humorous route, is on there as well. That's pretty funny. But there's just so many of them out there. Mental Health of America has offices throughout the nation as well. Then there's just the normal, right? Doctors, psychiatrists, neuropsychiatrists, therapists, counselors, life coaches. If that's the way you want to go, those are just the regular ones. But you could also go to peer-to-peer meetings. You could join, whatever type of club that could help you out for that support. You could join a church group. You could join a workout class. You could join bingo, whatever that is that works for you, because you're bound to find like people. But there's just so much out there that is available. And just a simple Google search can at least get them started.
Yeah, those are great points. And there are many, many faith-based organizations. If you'd like to look them up, the American Legion, VFW, for our veteran truckers or veteran-owned companies that are out there. Being a member of those groups, that's, for me, in my military background, doing and taking part with the older generations and others that served same time that I was, it's a healing thing to be around those heroes in my mind. So, Kenny, Mike, this has been more than I had planned for, and it has lifted me up in ways that I really didn't think that I needed to be lifted. Do you guys have any closing thoughts?
Just want to say thank you to Bruce. Tremendous guest we've had. And even though his primary background's in construction, he's made so many pertinent applications to our industry and trucking. And thank you, my friend. We appreciate what you're doing for us and for our listeners.
I'll echo that, Bruce. Thanks for being on with us. And I really want to thank you for sharing your personal your personal path that you've taken with mental health, with your family and your son. And sometimes that's, as Kenny mentioned before, I don't know if it was this episode or the previous episode, when we're talking with drivers, a lot of times they respond to the things that we tell them about our personal lives or what we've been through. And I think you being open and willing to share your personal story with us, I think it just it really hit home with me, and I'm sure it did with a lot of our listeners too. So I want to thank you for doing that. I know that's not always the easiest thing to do, but I know that you do that all the time. So I really appreciate that part of your story and what you shared with us. So thanks again for that.
Bruce, thanks for being on today. I cannot wait to work with you again. Thanks for what you're doing out there. It's making a difference. To the listeners, thanks for joining us. And I got a little challenge for you. I want you to share this particular podcast, whether you share all of them, share this one across your associations, around your membership groups, any peers or friends that you have across the trucking industry. Share this one. And we will catch you on the next podcast.
That's all the time we have for this episode of Driving the Line, the Pursuit of Safety. We hope you enjoyed our discussion and thank you for listening. You can rate, review, and subscribe to Driving the Line, the Pursuit of Safety on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or any other app you're using. You can also follow Marsh McLennan Agency on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. Until next time, thanks again for listening. Drive safely, everyone.